Is a Brexit delay really damaging?
Hello, and welcome to the Mark and Pete Show. Well, Super Saturday, the 19th of October, proved to be a complete washout. Yes, indeed, Boris Johnson has said that despite all of the issues, he will press on undaunted with his Brexit strategy, despite the fact that MPs backing the principle of yet a further delay to the process. Oh dear. Yes, the PM has decided to introduce the legislation needed to implement his excellent agreement in Parliament in the following week. Now, what does this all mean to the economy? And what does it mean to his credibility? In fact, what does it mean to me and you? The whole thing seems awfully uncertain. Yes, the fog of uncertainty has become too dense. The climate is toxic as politics is tense. The cloud of Brexit remains, and hence the future's unclear, and we've lost all sense. Clergyman Pete, what does this delay now mean to the economy and to everyone else, and particularly to you and me?
It's a disaster. Well, businessman Mark, I think that a delay is not good for the economy because the uncertainty, as we've talked about on this show before, uncertainty is now becoming the overriding problem in that really now a no deal or clean break Brexit would be preferable to any form of delay because the delay in itself is what's causing the damage. I mean, it was always a problem, but because it's gone on and on and on, we should have left on March the 29th, and it's October the 31st, and now there's more uncertainty. That's what that means if there's going to be a delay. But Boris Johnson, as you say, promises to fight on, and he's bringing back his deal to get the bills actually passed. I mean, it's a bit of a strange situation today. What they were going to have what they call a meaningful vote. Now, a meaningful vote really isn't that meaningful, to be honest, because
as it turned out.
No, but anyway, what it does is it shows the intent of Parliament, but it's not actually law. I mean, they've had lots of meaningful votes to do with Brexit, which have just been completely ignored. So, if it's the law of the land, then it has to be done, and it's enforceable. And so if you need to pass a bill, then it becomes an act of Parliament. Ta-da, you have to do it. So that's what he's going to be pressing on to do. And if Boris Johnson's government manages to pass the necessary act in order for the deal to go through, then he's done it. So in that case, maybe there won't be a delay. But the problem with that is we won't know until it's done. There's more uncertainty created even by that. So, we asked right at the start, is this Brexit delay damaging? Well, it's certainly damaging to businesses and their planning and budgeting. But it's also damage, of course, for the credibility of all of Parliament. I mean, they can't make a decision.
No. It's become, to say that red tape is in the way and to say that we're entangled and embroiled in a mess is an understatement. But there is one little glimmer of hope. All the protesters that demanding another Brexit referendum were absolutely jubilant over the fact that the MPs voted to force a further delay.
I love it when a plan comes together.
Yes, I mean, I'm sure that there were some that were absolutely delighted there, and we're all very pleased for them. However, let's get to the detail here. You're right. What this really means now is that businesses have now even more uncertainty that they've got to face over the weeks to come. And I think what's really proving quite damaging is more businesses are finding it difficult to decide how they stockpile or not, whether they take on new staff or not, can they employ EU people over the forthcoming months, years ahead. And these decisions that they've got in business are not something that they can take quickly, because some things take a lot of time.
Sure.
And especially when law comes into effect, unless you know exactly what you're dealing with, and accepting that data protection will all be part and of the process, and whether you're trading in business, etc., you still got to know everything from tax to payment of staff, where those staff will be resident, and that's a key thing as well, where your goods and where the borders will lie, because again your strategy is hindered if you still don't know whether you're going to be in or out of Europe as far as the UK is concerned. But I think that this is it is damaging to business, but I think it's also damaging to Boris Johnson's credibility. If we look at what happened in recent times, he seemed to have gained the trust of the members of the EU Parliament, and I think that was a positive thing. Coming back into this situation where now we've got a further delay, Boris Johnson quite vocally said that he believed that he could get this through, and he may still do so, but the delay doesn't help him politically. Now, we know that maybe that he can ride this as an individual. He seems, quite an individual who's hardened to this matter. But I'm also going to say another thing. If you step back and think of the general public, I can't see how United Kingdom voters can see any of these politicians of having any credibility, and everybody's exasperated. Some people say that the best solution to this is having a general election. I'm not entirely sure, as a voter, who the hell you'd vote for at this moment.
Well, this is the point. Let me just pick up on that. I think that this has been shown. I mean, I can't prove it, but I think it's been shown that it's Boris Johnson's strategy. That may be dreamt up by his advisors, but certainly the strategy that he's following to aim for a general election. Now, he can't actually just ask for one because of the Fixed Term Parliament Act. The only way to call an election is for 60% of the total MPs, not 60% of the people who are there, but 60% of all of them to vote for it.
Yep.
So he can't have one immediately, and they being Parliament, have said that they don't want to have an election until there's a delay. So here's the only sort of mitigating thing, circumstance again about a delay, in that it could provide an election. Now, you're saying an election wouldn't necessarily solve the problem. Yes, but it could do in this way. And this is...
it could.
In that
it could.
If we have an election and we end up with a working majority for one of the parties, or a party in coalition with someone else, or a party on what they call it, confidence and supply, in that another party just agrees to vote with them, then they'll be able to get their agenda going. And this is why the delay is damaging, and the uncertainty is damaging, in that decisions are not being made. Parliament is concentrating on this. It's eaten up by this one decision that they can't make to leave the EU. And so having an election puts someone in place who's going to do something. Now, we on the Mark and Pete show, of course, hope that it's a government gets into place who's going to actually develop Brexit, which puts us in the strange position as as individuals who have for a long time argued against most Tory policies. I think we're the Tory government. Are we saying that?
Well, I think that ultimately the thing that I want to see is a decision, effectively, in an ideal world, to have an agreement. Whether we're closer to the EU now, because this is unfortunately this is where we've got to. The hard Brexit is no longer a point of consideration that it once was. But I come back to the point that what Britain has to recognise is that too much over the last 3 years has been neglected. The issue of the infrastructure, the issue of the economy, the issue of the NHS, of education, has been sadly second place to the Brexit issue. And we're at a situation now where our credibility on a world stage has virtually plummeted to the lowest depths, certainly since in the living memory, in the last two generations,
yes,
for sure. I think most people would agree with that. And so where I think that what we need to do is at least come to some arrangement Now, I use the word arrangement very carefully, because whether that is a deal that is passed that is what Boris Johnson is proposing, or a variation on that, because at some point in the future, and this is the crucial thing that nobody wants to recognise, and that is that even if it had been signed up, over the Super Saturday, it would still be a long journey going on, because unfortunately the bit that politicians aren't telling you is that there's still many years of negotiations in terms of how everything works out, because there will be stumbling blocks through 2020 onwards. And so we've got to get to a starting point, effectively overcoming this first step of an agreement or a withdrawal or whatever it is, so that we can then move on and decide how we can continue sensibly to work with the EU and other countries in whatever arrangement that is, and whether we're allowed to or whether we're not allowed to. But the point being is, it's now stagnating almost every aspect of life. Yes. I mean, if I take the point, on people who are, say, for example, in the health sector, they're now stifled, because not only are things like medicines and consumable issues like that an issue, but also about the talent, because particular trusts can't make the decision to employ nurses from other countries long term, as in build long-term contracts, because they don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So almost every aspect of where we are in society is being affected by the non-decision. We now need a decision, and parliamentarians need to get to that and recognise it. So if that means an election, and the result of the election means that whichever party comes in makes the decision, great. But the point being is, we're not seeing our elected MPs be decisive. And that's the problem. It's now impacting every aspect of our lives. And I'm really surprised. I think that if it carries on even more, i.e. is delay a disaster? Yes, it's a disaster on almost every scale. So it doesn't matter where you are in society, whether you're in the EU, whether you're in the United Kingdom or anywhere else. And I would even come back to other countries that are not directly involved, whether it's the United States. How can the United States even decide how to even negotiate with Britain on a long term? They don't know whether they're in the EU or not.
Yes, I mean, yes, that is an issue. Let's just deal briefly with the situation to do with the letter. Without Parliament's sign-off, effectively, the Prime Minister is required by law to send a letter to Brussels requesting that Brexit will be delayed until January the 31st. Yeah. 3 months. And so,
a particular year of January 31st? I think you mean 2020, but I'm guessing
yes.
That's it, but you never know.
Yeah, to 2020. But I mean, this, of course, the PM has said his government is doing it, so effectively it's not him, but it's being done. But he is also, at the same time, telling the EU that he doesn't think that it's necessary. So he's sort of countermanding the letter immediately. And I know that he's doing this because he sent a letter round to MPs, which was then published, that's what he's doing. He decided to send the letter and then separately tell them that he doesn't agree with it. So what's going to happen with that? I don't know, but it's more uncertainty. Certainly, delaying till January seems an absolutely ludicrous extension. Yes. I mean, if you needed a slight delay to get through the necessary legislation just to get the withdrawal agreement started, the so-called deal enacted, so they can start, as you say, negotiating the trade deal, move on to the next part of negotiations. You're talking maybe another week or maybe another couple of weeks. You're not talking about 3 months of delay. That's just ridiculous going into next year.
Did you? I mean, here's a point that Jeremy Corbyn, another one of your heroes, said that the defeat, which obviously Boris Johnson faced here, and it has to be seen that way, represented an emphatic rejection of the Prime Minister's strategy, and he must now comply with the law in seeking a further extension. But to this point, and this is where I believe that oppositions in any normal circumstances would be in a position where they can challenge and crucially influence an impasse and they can break that impasse. And unfortunately, what's happened is that Corbyn and his cronies have now fueled this, because we've got this deadlock, and I'll call it a deadlock because after more than 3 years, we're at this point where indecision is really is sadly causing us a lot of angst, and I fear that the problem is that even if we did have a general election, I am not entirely sure that we'll have a parliament or certainly a government with a clear majority. And I think we could end up going back into the same situation. What is the answer? Well, I still believe that what should happen is that, and I think that here is possibly the answer, the EU themselves could say, guys, you really have no credibility. We're walking away. You are now. And this is the funny thing, because at some point, even though I know that the EU has always not wanted the United Kingdom to leave, there could come some quarters where they're actually probably thinking, look, let's just let them go. Yeah. And that's it. Yes. Well, so ironically, and then it would be ironic, that I think that the key could be the EU themselves.
Well, one of the key things is money, and the 39 billion that's often talked about. That's
which potentially I think was relegated to 33.
It's now 33 because what it is, it's the money left on the budget. You see, they budget for 5 years, and so it's paying the rest of the money on the budget. Now, of course, you wouldn't normally do that. If you leave a club, it doesn't matter if they've budgeted for the next few years. If you've left, you're not paying your dues. But that's what they want. So I think that they really need it. It's a lot of money, even 33 billion, and they need it. It's part of their planning, and they're in big trouble financially in other ways. So, what I think is they really want this deal. The pressure is now the other way. They need the deal. Otherwise, they would not. I mean, Johnson is a very charming fella, but I don't think that's what swung it. I think they wanted the deal, so they were prepared to do it because they needed the money. And so I think because the delaying isn't something they want to do, they want it to be pushed through Parliament so that they can get the deal and so get the money. So I think that if they think that this will get Johnson to get the deal through, they're going to say nope, and that is in fact what they've intimated. You can't hold them to that, but Juncker, who is the current president, his tenure ends on the 31st of October, has said there will be no what he called prolongation, making it sound like prorogation. That's another story there. But he's saying there isn't going to be any, and I think that's why he's trying to support Johnson. So, on a purely pragmatic level, I could see the EU managing to effectively force Britain to push the deal through by saying, if you don't, it's no deal.
Well, exactly.
Even though they don't want that. They can see that that's the pressure.
I think many people don't really, certainly a lot of analysts and political observers don't really seem to be.
They haven't understood how much the EU wants it. I think that's what they've missed. Yeah,
I think that's the point. And I've got to the point where, and I think we know on Mark and Pete, we've always been in favour of the fact that the United Kingdom should actually be out of the club.
Yes. We've just been very critical of the way it's been done.
Sympathy for the EU because of the delays, and after 3.5 years, it's become exasperating. And as you say, there will be a change of leadership in the EU in the very near future. So we've got another element there where actually decisions do need to be made very, very soon from their perspective. Because what you don't want is that you don't want the delay of the delay because of other leadership that's going to be taking place in the EU. My goodness, this is something that could run on for generations otherwise. I mean, don't think it's beyond reason that this is something where it could just run and run and run.
Yeah, but yes, and so in closing, I just like to quote Europe. That is to say, I want to quote the rock and pop band Europe and say that now
lovely, yes.
now it's the final countdown.
Oh. Yes, yes, indeed. Well, listeners, what do you think? Are you exasperated by this process? Are you hopeful that maybe somebody will see reason and actually there will be a solution? Well, I want to sort of end on a point here, and this is something that Boris Johnson actually said not that long ago, where he actually saw that there was possibly a pathway to the possible. Well, Mr. Johnson, we seem to be going nowhere fast. Searching a pathway to the possible is a worthy pursuit, unless you simply get lost somewhere en route. So be clear about the journey and plan your commute, or wander in the wilderness where no one will suit. Join us again for more of the saga on Brexit and other colourful subjects with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.